Today on Locked On Red Wings, Detroit drops a must-have game in overtime. Are they cooked?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the Daily J, a WWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your first bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. I don't know how to feel about this loss, Scotty. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to be coming on here dooming, and you texted me, credit to you, when they lost this hockey game, but they lost this game in probably narratively the worst possible way, because if they lose the game in regulation, as you put it, they're 3 games back or 3 points back when they have 1 game in hand. If they win, they're 1 point up and the Caps still have a game in hand. Well, they lose in overtime. So you're 2 points back, and like that 1 point makes all the difference to the narrative on this conversation. And it wasn't like they got killed. It was a back and forth hockey game. It's back-to-back games where I thought they played overall well, like maybe not as consistently well as they played in Nashville. It was very back and forth, but there were definitely spurts, 5 to 10 minutes at a time, where they looked like the better team, and then Washington would come back down like it looked like and felt like a playoff game, but they fell in overtime. So, like, how much does that even matter when you end up 1 point further back in the standings with just 10 games left? It's just, I don't know how to feel. I'm probably not as negative as a lot of our listeners are going to be, but I'm like, I don't know how to feel after a game like this, Scotty. I really don't.
Yes. I mean, genuinely, like you said, an overtime loss is easily the weirdest outcome that could have happened, and it's slowly slipping, right? It's slowly slipping out of grasp, and this just feels like a situation of, There's a line in the movie Moneyball where he goes, would you rather, he's teaching Jonah Hill how to cut somebody from the team. He goes, would you rather take whatever he says, like 10 arrows to the chest and like bleed to death, or just take 1 shot to the head and that be it? And Jonah Hill's like, is that my only 2 options? Like, that's weird. This feels like it's just like this slow, just dragged out process. We had a huge lead. We lose it all. And now the overtime loss, we're here, and it's okay. Well, you only lose a point, I guess. That's not awful. And if you win,
you're not out of it.
A week and a half. If you win that game, then you could be right back in it, and you could be tied again. Who knows what happens in the games leading up to that for both sides? Like, it's not just objectively you look at it and you go, okay, well, this is insurmountable, it's over. As a loss, there would have been a lot more of that. But it's also certainly not a great situation to be in, and you did lose ground. It's just a not fun situation to be in.
And with the fact that you play them again in like a week, it's like, all right, well, you have an opportunity to make it up and win 2 of 3 against the Capitals on the season. So it's such a bizarre situation to be in. But I guess we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth, but we got to get to our difference maker, Scotty. I'm going to go to you first, because I know what your difference maker is, and chronologically, it just makes more sense to talk about that one first. What's your difference maker in this 4-3 loss to the Washington Capitals?
Yeah, I think for me, it's pretty clearly the goal that the Capitals scored at the start of the third period. I think that you're going into the third with a 1-goal lead. You have all this momentum. You looked really sharp at the end of the second, and it immediately, you go from having a lead and trying to play, like, we need to score a goal, we need to extend this league, etc. And you have just completely changed your entire mindset. I mean, obviously I'm not in that locker room, but there's a chance that everything that you were game planning for to hold the lead and what you wanted to do and what you want to take advantage of goes out the window because they tie it within seconds of the third period starting. I think that goal completely changes the entire outlook of this hockey game. And it's really, really difficult to get punched in the mouth coming out of the third period and then, come back and to their credit, obviously they did. Then they were losing 3-2, and then Patrick Kane scored and they sent it into overtime, obviously. But I really do think that goal is there was a lot of momentum in that goal, and when you look back on it, that's going to be the biggest difference maker. Ozzy in the post game talked about it as well as one of the key moments to the game. So kind of piggybacking off that, I guess.
No, it absolutely is. You score in the second period, late in the second period, to take a 2-1 lead off of a power play goal, which the power play has been struggling, and they didn't give up in front of the net. They finally break through, and you go, okay, 20 minutes left in this hockey game. Play lockdown, not even like obviously you want to add to it in reality, but play tight defensively, and you can get out of here with an important 2 points. And then they collapse immediately at the start of the third period. And if you watch that on replay, and Moritz Seider and Ben Chiarot, I continue to like as a pair. Like, that pair is so much better. And like, what it's been 5-6 games now of them together.
Yeah.
They played big minutes in this game, almost 25 minutes apiece, which is what we've been asking out of Moritz Seider as a top pair. And they've looked good. But in that moment, everyone had their guy covered. Ben Chiarot lost his guy out front. The puck comes off the back of the boards, and who was the guy who ultimately scored that game-tying goal, Connor McMichael, who spins away from Chiarot, gets the puck up off the back of the boards, and just buries it on Lyon, who couldn't find it because it took a fortunate bounce off the backboard. So it's just one of those situations where on bad timing on a defensive breakdown from a guy who, of all the things that Ben Chiarot is, one thing he is not is easy to play against. I mean, for him to lose his guy in that spot, that's one thing that you don't expect out of Chiarot. And it was a bad, it was his guy, like it was. And I'm not saying he's the sole reason they lost this game, but that moment definitely swung momentum in the direction of the Washington Capitals, who for the next 10 minutes of the third period really took control. And as you have already noted, then scored the next goal on top of that on just a horrible defensive zone faceoff where the third line just stood like statues in the defensive zone. Third line got cooked. And we'll talk about that in the notable performers, but it definitely had a snowball effect. And obviously my difference maker in this game is going to be the no-brainer, the goal that sealed it in overtime. Alex Debrincat overcommitted on a forecheck, came back down on a 2-on-1. Dylan Larkin didn't play the defensive piece of it correctly. I'm not too shocked by that. He's not a defenseman. They allowed, was it Strome, to just skate right to the net and an easy chip pass for the goal. I mean, if there's ever an obvious difference maker, it's the game winner, and which is surprising too, because I didn't expect the Red Wings to win every single overtime game, but the Red Wings are usually money in overtime. But this time, they made it too easy on the defensive side of things coming back down. So,
yeah, I also think in overtime, I I wish they would have played the possession game a little bit more. We see that so often in overtime. Like, whoever possesses the puck more usually takes OT. And I guess I don't know what the final possession numbers were in that period specifically, but for at least the first minute and a half of overtime, it was a lot of possession by Washington. And then when the Wings did get the puck back, it was a rush, and Raymond got pushed to the outside, but still, like, I don't think he forced a shot, but he wrapped around and then tried to kick it out, and it just like left the zone completely. And then there was a turnover. Like, I feel like they were even kind of rushing, especially in the first bit of overtime. And I wish they would have, slowed it down maybe. And they did at points too, but I wish they would have slowed it down and played the possession game a little bit more.
Well, yeah, the Red Wings had 0 shot attempts in the overtime period.
Yeah,
Washington had 4, had 2 on net. So, I mean, that says all of it. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll talk about notable performances in this game, kind of touched on it, hinted at what we were going to talk about. So stay tuned for that in segment 2, rather. I wish it was segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Well, the parts you need, sorry, Scotty, we don't deserve it today. At the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're going to move on now to our notable performances in this hockey game. And I think there's really two that stand out as like just absolute give and take performances. One, Alex Debrincat we already mentioned the overtime, he overcommitted, didn't get back in time to support the back check on the overtime goal against, but also the first goal against, he overskates a puck, doesn't get back defensively to help out. And the guy in the seam, which was Nick Dowd, just high slot, scores, easy 1-0 for the Capitals after a really tough first frame that was back and forth, but then immediately goes down the ice, gets a beautiful feed from Jeff Petrie, who skates down the wing behind the boards and scores his first goal in 12 games at a crucial point. So, and gets the primary assist on Patrick Kane's goal to tie it. So Alex Debrincat, notable performer number one, as just a player who was blowing plays for goals against, but also being clutch for goals for.
Yeah, I know that feels like I don't want to say the epitome of his season, but that does feel like kind of the giveth and taketh we've talked about with Sherratt and Petrie pair, I guess, as a whole throughout the season, certainly was on the table today. Yeah.
Yeah. So Debrincat was notable performer number one, and notable performer number two was the guy who assisted on Debrincat's goal, Jeff Petrie. I was like, Jeff Petrie moment. Got the assist, drove down the boards, found Debrincat out front for a goal. Good for Jeff Petrie. And then proceeded to pass up on a for sure goal out front.
Was it a pass? I still don't even know.
That was a pass attempt to know.
Yeah, I guess it was. It's either a really bad shot or a pass attempt for sure. But yeah, man, it goalie was laying stomach on ice and just went for a pass there. And I think it happened. It was a bang play. I'm sure he had already kind of decided he was going to pass, but it just tough, really tough in that moment. They were down a goal when that happened. Really tough to see that play out for sure.
Yeah, and it's getting a lot more sheltered minutes for the bottom two pairs in this game, which I really did like. They finally used Seider in a way that I was hoping, and maybe that has to do with the fact that Sherratt has proved himself a little bit capable of playing the top pair, which is so crazy to say, but I mean, credit where credit is due. Sherratt and Seider pairing has been playing really well. I know I was talking about and criticizing Sherratt for that goal against, but throughout the rest of this game, I mean, they're getting the toughest assignments. They led I think they led defense in defensive zone faceoffs with 11 each, but they also led the defense in offensive zone faceoffs with 9 each. Like they're getting utilized in both positions, and they had almost 25 minutes of ice time in this game, that is how we record. Like a week or two ago, we talked about Seider's usage and how it was getting ridiculous that he was only getting put in these tough situations. Now Wallman's hurt for whatever reason, maybe it's because it's just another piece of the depth gone. Now Sherratt's on the first pair. They're sheltering the bottom two pairs a little bit more and playing Seider like a number one pair. And I thought Sherratt as well, but we always talk about Seider because he's like he's the shiny object for the Detroit Red Wings. He's the future star. We feel the future number one defenseman. But I thought Seider played such a good hockey game in this one. And he paired up most of his minutes, same with Sherratt, were against Alex Ovechkin, tough minutes. And I thought that they played well. They had a Corsi for percentage over 50. They were both, Seider at least was positive relative. And I know some of their numbers they're still lower on the chart. Most of the Red Wings had more shot attempts for on the ice than against. They outshot the Capitals in this game. But I don't know what you're going to do with Wallman when you come back, but it feels like a good problem to have. Hopefully he comes back soon because unless it costs us Edvinsson, because I don't know, Edvinsson again didn't have the greatest game in the world, but he still looks better than some of the things we're trying out there.
He also had some moments where he looked really good. He had a couple of really nice passes that I liked, and then he also got lifted off his skates and had some moments that weren't great either for sure.
The ceiling is there. Like
Yeah,
you see it.
100%.
So I hope when Wallman comes back, they keep Edvinson and you roll with that on your left side and bump Mata out. I don't know, but he's been playing so well. I mean, you're sheltering Mata and Gossesbear so much to the point it's like, what's even the point? Like Gossesbear pretty much only plays power play at this point. So, anyways, that's what I got to say about the defensive pair. I wanted to gush about them. Scotty, any notable performers for you?
Yeah, Alex Lyon, I think, is a notable performance. Certainly, goaltending is going to be at this point in the season. It certainly wasn't the greatest game ever, but I don't think that it was a poor performance by him at all. I think in the overtime goal, we already talked about it, kind of got just completely hung out to dry. One of the goals, I guess, maybe some rebound control could have been better, but some high danger opportunities that he allowed, or that the team allowed, I should say, in this game. So I certainly, when I think of, reasons why the Red Wings lost, Alex Lyon is not on that list in my eyes.
No, I agree. I thought he looked sharp again in this game. He made a couple huge saves in the first period in particular. And it was honestly kind of a goalie battle. I mean, Charlie Lindgren, if you want to talk about notable performances, Red Wings not nearly as much. I mean, they got shut out 1-0 against the Predators. They got goalied in that game, but Lindgren was on top of it. He made some incredible saves. And I feel bad for Lyon because this is back-to-back performances where I thought he deserved the win. Obviously, the fourth goal coming in overtime. And he didn't. And like Reimer, I thought he's played better than Reimer. But Reimer's gotten 3 wins in this span. So it's just like Lyon's finally getting his game right in back-to-back games, and the Red Wings can't get him a win as evidence of those performances. And it's tough. It is how it is sometimes, man. Tough. That's a good way of putting it. What you make of the third line in this game, buddy?
That's what we call a softball, because we were talking off air for a while before this game started about how much the third line struggled. Yeah, obviously not a great performance from them and when we talked about the last few games, this line being put back together and getting some playing time after a few weeks of not getting some playing time, I think maybe you start to look at and remember why they stopped playing together. Yeah. It's just super hit or miss. They don't have very many meh games. Like they either look and you go, wow, that third line was the best line on the team tonight. Or you look and you go, oh my goodness, they got absolutely kicked in.
As a line, they had a collective shot attempt share of 28.57 in this game. 6 shot attempts for generated, 15 shot attempts against. They got absolutely caved in. Individually, they were negative 27% each for Corsi for percentage relative. So shot attempt share relative to their teammates, 27 less. That's 27% less. That's not good. That's not good. Meanwhile, the fourth line, granted, in very sheltered minutes, only shy of 9 minutes at 5-on-5, had a shot attempt share relative to their teammates of 27%. So they were 27% better in a much smaller sample size. But like the fourth line matched up against the other team's fourth line is great. And I love Austin Czarnik. Like he is a dog. We use that term pretty liberally. Everyone's a dog if we like them. But that fourth line in this game, in the limited ice time they got, was buzzing. And we talk about Sprong being a healthy scratch, right? Or we haven't really talked about it, but we probably should. When you see Czarnik going out there and playing the way he does and hustling on both ends of the ice, especially as a center, which is a much more valuable position than wing, you're like kind of hard to justify putting Sprong back in there, moving Veleno back to center when that fourth line with Veleno and Czarnik and Fabry is buzzing in the limited ice time, but still.
For sure, yeah, I do think that some of that is going to come down to also how you reshuffle the third line because, right, clearly that line's not going to make it to the end of the year. Clearly there's going to be some shuffling happening there, so indirectly that's probably going to affect some fourth line playing time, which then is going to, affect all of that conversation. But
well, like for instance, in 8 minutes of ice time, Veleno, Fabry, and Czarnik had 18 shot attempts for, which is only behind your top 4 D-men in this game, who, because they play more ice time, there's fewer D-men, so they generate more for and more against generally just because of the sample size. So in 11 less minutes than Ben Sherratt. They generated just 10 less shot attempts. I mean, that says a lot to me about how well that fourth line's playing matched up against other fourth lines. And that's a reason why I think Zarnik's still up with the NHL club when normally he'd probably be sent back down.
Yeah, he's been skating well, man. He looks good.
I think that about does it for my notable performers. I'm sorry if I forgot anyone. Power play scored. That's big. One for two, right? Just 2 power plays in this game. So that was nice.
Yeah.
I think, let me double check. I have the stats right in front of me. I can read it to you. 1 for 2. Yep. And then I guess in segment 3, we can talk about whether or not this team's cooked and look at the standings, and you guys can doom with us. So stay tuned for that in segment 3. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel let you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, so you can pick who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Scotty, segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Patrick Kane, don't want to overlook him. Continues to be clutch in big moments. Scored a big slap shot goal from Patrick Kane in the high slot to tie the game up with about 5 minutes left in the game. Don't want to forget him as he continues to be one of the most clutch factor players in winning games or tying games late for the Detroit Red Wings. I don't have much to say about Patrick Kane in this hockey game besides just absolute showtime clutch factor, like ridiculous.
Yeah, it was a great play, great win against the boards, and then kick it out to Kane just by himself. If he didn't make that, I would have been somewhat concerned. Just absolute, snipe, and great for, obviously that kind of rejuvenated everybody after blowing the lead in the third period. They don't get the job done, obviously, but was obviously a huge, I just said obviously like 6 times, a huge moment in the hockey game. And I do think that Kane has been okay. He's been pretty good throughout in his Red Wings tenure. He's been all right.
Just all right. I mean, the second half of that third period was all Red Wings. Like, it was, the Red Wings felt the pressure and they did their classic third period push, and it worked out for them until overtime. It's just, this is how the team plays hockey games. They had a lot of high danger shots or high danger chances as well, just getting to the net front and just not burying it. There were so many times where they could have scored and won the game, but they just didn't. But anyways, the question here is, and we kind of talked about it a little bit to start the podcast, now down 2 points. Capitals have a game in hand on you and a tough stretch ahead of you, but the Capitals on the schedule again at LCA. Are the Red Wings cooked? Like, is the season over at this point? If they had won in regulation, I'd say no. If they had lost in regulation, I'd say yes, but they didn't. They won in they lost in the weirdest possible way they could have. So where do you feel we're at now, Scotty?
We'll see. That's like pretty much where I'm at, dog. You have to win. You have 10 games left now. You have to win a lot. And really now you have to take it one game at a time, obviously, but now the focus shifts to the next time you play Washington and what the situation is going to be for that game. If you are, I don't know how many games they play till then, if we're going to be even in games played at that point or not, but if you get to that point and you've won enough to make it tied or you're 1 point back, etc., then there you go. Pushes back on, you win that hockey game, you're back into the wild card. You obviously then have to finish the job and win the games following to close out the season. This was such a weird outcome, and I think that it obviously has a lot more to do than just the next Washington Capitals game, but you better win some of those games leading up to that for sure.
Right.
You've just put yourself in a position, I guess my rambling here, that it really hasn't meant anything. You have put yourself in a position where now it is not. It's like control your own destiny on steroids. Like you have to win a lot. You have to win what 7, 8 of your last 10. Is that like ridiculous? You have to win a lot of hockey games in the last 10 games. But is the season over? No. You play this team again in a week and a half.
Yeah. So it's I'm with you. This season's not over. I don't think they really control their destiny anymore, given the fact that they're on the outside looking in. The Capitals have a game in hand. But at the same time, like the silver lining here, the good news is you're only 2 points back. There's still 10 games left to be played. The Capitals could go cold, and that's where you don't control your own destiny. You can't control what the Capitals do.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
You have a game in hand on the Flyers, who you're only 3 points back. And if the Flyers keep losing and the Capitals keep winning, the Capitals will overtake the Flyers for third in the Metro. And with a game in hand on the Flyers, you have an opportunity then to surpass them. It's like I was saying, if you can stay ahead of third in the Metro, you don't have to worry about the Metro teams.
Right.
So there's still that window there, but you look at the remaining schedule, the next 5 games are brutal. So with the fact that even though they played Nashville hard and they lost, Washington was a seesaw battle. I struggle to say that they deserve to win the hockey game, but it's at the same time, I don't think they deserve to lose. Like it was just a back and forth battle.
A really close hockey game, man.
It felt like a playoff game.
It was a really close back and forth game.
But you have Carolina on Thursday in Carolina. You have Florida on Saturday in Florida. You have the Lightning on Monday in Tampa. Then you have the Rangers at home, and then Buffalo. It lightens up a little bit with Buffalo in terms of quality of competition. Buffalo, Washington, Pittsburgh, like for those next 3, but it lightens up in competition. But with the way the Red Wings are playing right now and the way the results are going, like those aren't opponents you can take lightly either. Like the next 4 games on the schedule are an absolute gauntlet, and 3 of those are on the road. Not to say the Red Wings can't win those hockey games, right? We've been surprised at many points in this season with the performances they had, and now would be a great time to go on a late game heater, but there's not a lot of confidence instilled in me. But are they cooked? Well, no, because they of course they lost in overtime to keep themselves in the fight. But
that's my point.
It's a much tougher battle.
That's my point from earlier, man. Like this has just been so dragged out and exhausting. Like this whole thing has just been so slow and painful. And yeah, they've done just enough, barely enough, to keep themselves still in the conversation and still have a chance to do this. They just have to turn it around and play really good hockey the last 10 games here.
Well, and you look at the last 6 games, right? You're 3-2-1 in the last 6. And so on the record, you're like, okay, that doesn't look great. 4-1, like a statement 4-1 win to snap your losing streak. Then you get killed by Pittsburgh. You're like, it's over again. Grinded out win against Columbus. Statement win against the Islanders where you're like, we're so back. A 1-0 loss against a very hot Nashville Predators team, which, by the way, had a huge third period comeback against the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. Then a 1-goal loss again, this time to the Washington Capitals. Like they are playing, with the exception of the Penguins game in that stretch, they're playing better hockey. They're just not getting rewarded on the win-loss record. And I know that's not a ton of consolation for those listening, because at the end of the game, those losses matter this late in the season.
Yeah.
But like, I just don't know. It's hard to be optimistic when you look at it, right? But at the same time, like the results, they're playing well enough that you're like, they could turn it around. Like they're not so cooked that I'm like, they're going to just suck the last 10 games of the year, but they're not playing well enough where I can confidently say, they're going to win a few of these games. They might lose 6 of the next 10, but by 1 goal. And I could come on here every single game and be like, they could have won, but they didn't. It's just a really frustrating spot to be in.
That's it, though. Way too many could have won, but they didn't games in the last month of the season here. Way too many. And that is the thing that has absolutely killed them. And it is important to mention that this is not just, close enough games. We can't have rebuild mindset when you're trying to make make the postseason. We can't just keep doing the, well, they didn't get outplayed, so we can't be like too upset. At some point, you have to stop 8-game losing streaks, right? You have to not let that happen at the most crucial point in the season.
Right.
You have to beat teams that are equal or above you in the playoff standings if you want to make that push. At some point, the conversation has to change from, oh, well, we could have won, or it was close and it was competitive, etc. And you just have to actually win them.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful spot to end the episode, Scotty.
Beauty.
So you have any final thoughts, dude?
We do ball.
We, specifically us and the listeners, we ball.
Everyone.
No, not the Red Wings.
Everyone. So ridiculous. I see you.